Hey guys, this is Pastor Julian Danner here. Hey, I'm going to do a little study here, or a little class rather, on what I've learned here in pastoral ministry or pastor ministry. There's a lot of topics that I have dealt with or learned in this class I'd like to go over with you guys. First up is pastoral calling. This is probably the most important one for me, because I can remember the day I got my calling to be a pastor. I never chose to want to be a pastor. It was never my idea to be a pastor. Matter of fact, I've had several pastors close to me and family that I knew the heavy burden of a pastor, and I just knowing the calling of God on your life or for your life is very, very important. I've done many things in ministry, and I've told several friends that pastoring is the one ministry that I've done that I just love being a pastor. I loved being a men's leader also, but there's something different about being a pastor. There's just something different about it. But knowing your calling, knowing that God's called you to do this is super important, that you know it came from God. It's not something that you're just drawn to. It's not something that you see others doing. You're going, hey, I want to be a pastor. And it's not for the faint of heart. It's like very, very in the trenches, warfare, constantly battling, constantly trying to hold others up. You are the, without sounding kind of crude, you're kind of the hub of the whole tire. The whole church is held together in your obedience to God, and in your leadership and your following of the Holy Spirit. You're there in the midst of their battles with them, helping them through. You're just the whole thing relies on the pastor. And knowing that you're called to do that is very, very important, because you just don't want to go in there and be a pastor and then it's not your calling and you make a mess of it. And anyways, you have got to have, I just knew when God changed my heart, gave me a heart of a shepherd, and I started caring about whether or not somebody went to the altar, or whether or not somebody was growing spiritually, or whether or not somebody changed in the church. I knew God had changed my heart, and because those things weren't of a great concern to me before, I cared, but it just was different. I knew the moment that God called me. Next up is devotional life for a pastor. This is the most essential part of pastoring. Sunday mornings isn't as important. Sunday schools and Wednesday night and all the other things are not as important. They're important, don't get me wrong. They're important, but they're not as important as personal preparation and prayer time. You have got to continually carve time out, make time for yourself to study and to pray, not for the sermon, but just to pray and fellowship with God. This here is probably the key to success in the ministry. Devotional time, devotional life. You must have this as a cornerstone in your walk. This should be your very first thing you put on your calendar. If you're a calendar kind of person, scheduler, this is the very first thing you do, is put your devotional time down. Next up is Sabbath healing. This really was not something I was very keen about initially, because I just come from an atmosphere, a mindset of you just work, you bellow through, you do whatever it takes to become successful, and hard work trumps talent. Anytime talent forgets to work hard, never once did I really think, hey, I just need to take time off and just rest. Taking a Sabbath healing is important. This helps you just reconnect to the vision, reconnect to that drive and that motivation, that purpose. Taking time away helps to do this. I've really put some emphasis on this area of my life. The book Leading on Empty is really good. That's Wayne Cordero. I'm sure I didn't say that right, but that book is really good. It's a good help on just illuminating the importance of taking that time to rest and recoup, because you can. I mean, you and that's the way I teach it in service, is that, you know, your vessel has to be full for you. You can't loan that anointing out for anybody else. That your vessel is only full for you. You loan out or you give out in the overflow. So you must be overflowing to be able to give out. So taking Sabbath rest helps you to reconnect and overflow. Personal life, building boundaries. Man, I can't tell you how important this is, because there's so many things around boundaries. And initially, at first glance, you think, boundaries. I need to set boundaries around, I'm a male. I don't want to be caught in a compromising situation with another individual where anything inappropriate could be said that I did or didn't do, you know. And that's absolutely boundaries that need to be in place. But a little bit deeper than that, boundaries as far as back to your devotional time, that's a boundary. When you set that time and carve that time in and say, nothing's going to get in the way of this, nothing's going to get in the way of me taking my devotional time and my prayer time, that's a boundary. When you say, I'm going to take a Sabbath rest, okay, now I believe it's taught every, you know, something like every 7 years, take 3 months off. I don't know if that's the answer for everybody, but how about every 3 to 6 months taking a weekend and getting away and just relaxing? You know, that's important, and that's something that I am trying to incorporate more and more in my schedule. So setting the boundaries for those things. Hey, this is what I'm going to do. Nothing's getting in the way of this. Another boundary is setting aside personal time with your spouse. You know, yeah, ministry is important, and you're going to have plenty of opportunity to be in ministry and do ministry. But when you have a spouse involved in ministry, which they are such a blessing, I can't do it without my wife, that taking that boundary and saying, okay, it's our time now. Church is great, and I love the church, but we have got to have our time. That's another area of boundaries. Boundaries is important in your personal life. Pastoral care, this is something that is always difficult. It's just difficult because you're dealing with grieving folks. You're dealing with folks in traumatic situations where a lot of times you don't have the answer for them. A lot of times you just can't fix it for them. And a lot of times you just don't even have the words to say. When it comes to grieving, just having the right words to say is a lot of times absent from me. But what I do know is this, is that taking the time to be there with them, pray with them, encourage them when the moments are right, just walking with them. I had a man in my church whose wife passed away, and he spent the last 10 years just being her caretaker and just doing everything to help her thrive and live. And he really just invested so much energy and time into her in the last 10 years of her life that he didn't do prior to that, because there wasn't necessarily a physical need for him to, but it had really caused him to grieve something really fierce. And I didn't have the answer. All I knew is that keep trusting the Lord, keep moving forward. Time will help this heal. You'll never forget. It's always going to be a spot there that's going to flare up from time to time, and you're going to have days and moments and that are going to be difficult, but we're here with you. We're here for you, and just be there. That's all you really can do. Counseling, on the other hand, you're dealing with a very gamut of things. It could be anything from someone's addiction to trouble in the marriage to an adolescent issue, and on and on and on. It could just be, discipline congregants in your church. They're just, having issues. You're trying to teach them and talk to them and train them and deal with them. I've had to do a lot of that growing with a smaller church. So these are a lot of issues that you have to come across. Pastors are leaders of leaders, and I 100,000 times agree with this, because a friend of mine told me, a pastor friend of mine said, brother, your number one job is to work yourself out of a job. And what he was saying, you have to train up leaders to do the jobs that you are doing right now, so that in the future you don't have to do those jobs. So you're not doing the PowerPoints, and you're not doing the soundboard, and you're not having to greet everybody at the door every day, every service, and and just on and on and on. Youth leaders and children's worker, and just all these little jobs that you have no one for. Train leaders to fill those positions so that you don't have to do it. Building those leaders is so important. A quote that I heard during this, and I really agree with it so much, especially since I've become a pastor, is readers are leaders. And my goodness, I can't tell you how important it is. I can't tell you everything I read. I can't tell you everything I read in one book, but I can tell you that in every book I've read, I've learned something to either change about myself, to grow myself, to implement, to help make us better. And I would have never gotten that stuff if I hadn't been a reader, and I wouldn't be passing it on to my other leaders either if I hadn't read myself. Ceremonies of the church, these are two of the most important areas. There's many different things that might go on in a church, but baptisms and the Lord's Supper are two of the biggest areas of ministry ceremonies in the church that you want to really focus in on, really want to gravitate back to the basics. Why are we doing this? What is it for? How is it going to help your walk with Christ? Or why are we even doing it to begin with? These things are very good opportunities to be teaching our folks about the fundamentals of being a Christian, about where our heritage comes from, what is the purpose of baptism, how does it make me a better Christian, and what does the Lord's Supper really do for me? Does it, really change anything in the moment, or is it something that brings me back to where Christ was at when he was walking this world in the flesh, and he spent that fellowship time with the disciples, breaking bread and talking about his body, which is the sacrifice, his blood, which covers our sin, and on and on and on. Ceremonies are a vital part of the church. And then here's one that really just drives home for me. It's in it for the long haul. I once was a manager at a restaurant. I took over a restaurant that was really doing poorly. It was getting bad ratings, and the staff was just kind of out of control. And I met with my district supervisor, and we were just talking. And he said, Julian, this is like turning a ship. You don't just turn a ship overnight. It takes a long time to get a ship turned around. And that's the truth of the matter. When it comes to a church and ministry, you've got to be in it for the long haul. The initial upfront honeymoon phase feels great. And then as soon as that's over with, and it comes faster than you would imagine, there's the drudgery feeling of every day working towards the goals and getting to the next level, and growing and growing and growing, and just doing outreach and all of these things. the disappointments that come along with that when you put time and effort into someone and then you're not seeing them progress, or you're actually seeing them regress, and all of that is part of it. Just know that you're not in it for the moment right this second. You're in it for the long haul, the victory at the other side when you cross the finish line. You're in it for when that person that you're putting so much time and energy into one day is then a leader in the church, and they're leading others and they're discipling others. That's the victory, not the moments. Yes, celebrate the moments that happen that are great, but don't be down and discouraged when there's not greatness going on. Time management, crucial to every ministry, is governing time management from the time of your devotions to the time of your study times, to your times to preparing for your lessons, to the times of dealing with and incorporating others. Just time management can get away from you so quickly. You don't got the time to not have time management. You've got to make sure that you schedule your time appropriate. And that's it, guys. That's all I've got for the PowerPoint here on studying through God's pastoral ministry. I hope you enjoyed this. Looking forward to getting back with you again. Talk to you later. This is Pastor Danner.